Hey, welcome to this podcast.
All right, everybody. We are joined by Joey Logano, a man who has turned his back on the balding community but looks better for it. That's okay. We won't hold it against you. We're a station. This is our first time.
It's not too late for you either.
Glad you said it, not me.
I got
Thought
a
about it,
guy.
by the way.
My bank account isn't.
Joey hook you up?
Okay with that.
I got a hookup.
You have the Logano. Use code discount Joey.
Logano Hair Club, man. It works.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so you're the first guest that we've ever had on our first day of ever having a station at Media Day. So, what should we be prepared for today? Do you guys get tired as the day goes on here?
I'd say that your interviews are probably going to get worse as the day goes along. Just keep it away from the what would it mean to win a championship. That's the worst question ever.
Okay.
What other bad questions are there? This is good to know.
That's the worst one, because that one to me takes no thought. I think to me, like, the good reporters do a little homework beforehand to have like a good question that makes you think a little bit. You're like, oh, those are the ones that, and you guys do a good job at that.
I appreciate that.
But the ones that don't think about it, like, oh, what would it mean to win a championship? Or how do you get through the next round? Like, well, you win. Like, I don't know, you do better than the rest of them. Like, I don't know. Like, get dumb questions, you don't get dumb answers. So that's what I always think. So.
Okay.
But you guys are good at it. You guys are pros.
Well, all right, let me ask you this question and see if this is a good one. When I looked at the playoff schedule, and Atlanta was obviously coming on, and we know everybody's kind of scared of Atlanta. It's an unknown track. I looked at it as an advantage for you guys because, one, Penske does really, really well on super speedways. You obviously have won there before. I looked at it as like, okay, maybe they take away a bread and butter track, maybe a Darlington or something like that, but Atlanta's a pretty good comparable for you guys because you guys typically do well in those races.
Yeah, the speedways have been good up until they're not. Right? Like, I mean, that's just what speedway racing is these days. And when I think about what we've been able to do on super speedways, whether it's stage points or leading laps this year and really over the last few years, the Penske cars have been great. With that said, sometimes it doesn't matter because the end of the race turns into such a mess that you get caught up in a wreck and you're in the info care center again doing an interview with you guys. So that's what you try not to be at. But the facts are, when you're racing up front, eventually that's usually where the wreck starts, more times than not. So I've been a product of that for a few times, Daytona being the most recent. So, we'll try to score stage points and at least have that in the bank, right? I mean, that's the most important thing. At least get something out of the day, no matter what. And if we can run at the end and have a shot to win, then, we're going to take advantage of that.
It seems like from an outsider's view, the aggression level of these races just seems to ramp up more and more every year. You're one of the ones that has had a bridge to the last generation of guys who raced a little bit differently than the field races today. Is there any way to describe how much the racing has changed over the course of your career?
Oh, it's a 180. I mean, it's completely different. I think about when I first started racing, and then even when I first got into the 22 car, and I was the most aggressive guy on the racetrack, right? And I was like, okay. Now, I don't think I'm the most aggressive guy anymore. Like, it is throughout the whole field. And then you brought in the next gen car, and it escalated it another notch to where, like, everyone's running the same speed, so there's no give and take ever. The cars are tougher than what they were before. Right? Think about it with the steel body cars, especially remember we used to pull the sides out and everything? We had the transformer cars that, like, as soon as the first pit stop, the
2014
crew was
era.
pulling everything out, right? And gosh, if you touch somebody, it'd knock your sides in or it'd cut a left rear tire down, and that was it. So, like, no one even touched each other. Now, like, everybody kind of doinks each other a little bit here and there. Like, it's not a thing. You used to not be able to hit the wall at Darlington and not get a right rear tire flat. Now, like, the cars are just tougher, and it promotes more and more aggressive racing, which I think is good. It's
entertaining.
I mean, that's right.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a good thing.
Have you had to recalibrate though? Like, like you were, say, a 5 on the aggression scale, but now you're like, well, everybody else is a 7. I need to go to 7 too.
I think it just depends on the timing of it, right? Like, there's times you have to be ultra aggressive and go for it, and there's also times where the smart racer will prevail more, all the time. So being smart when your aggression level is its highest versus when you think you need to manage your car or manage something, your track position or whatever it may be, is definitely changed, right? I mean, restarts for one. I mean, remember shoot, restarts, if someone went 3 wide on a restart, it's like, oh, wow, he went 3 wide.
Yeah.
Now they go 4 wide, 5 wide. Like 3 wide's like, yeah, he went 3 wide, big deal. Like not a thing anymore. Like that's just what it's gotten to.
Yeah. You're not old yet, but you're getting more and more experienced.
You went with the hair joke right off the bat. So. Takes one to know one. I get it.
Yeah, you can say
good
it,
with
right?
it. I'm good with it.
But at some point, you're going to be, truly the elder statesman, because some of your contemporaries are starting to drop off here. I mean, we're losing Truex, you lost Harvick. Between now and then, when you're like the last guy standing, in 10 years or whatever it is, what do you have left to accomplish? What do you want to do to leave your mark on this sport?
I feel like that's it's a hard question to answer, because there's what happens on the track and what happens off the track. And I kind of think they're 2 different things. But for me, like on track, it's always been just win the next race, right? Like that's what it's always been my whole career. There's never been like, I need to win 50 races and I need to win 5 championships, or like, I didn't have a goal like that. It's just, what we're going to do this year. We're going to try to win the championship. And if we don't, we'll try to win it next year. And we'll do it again and again and again, right? It's the same thing with the races. If we try to win this weekend, if we can't, we'll try to win the next week. It's the goal just to me is just the same all the time. And there's not like a number that I have to hit. Maybe that's just me looking at the hood pins and not any further down the road, but that's just the way I operate. As far as on, off the racetrack, I think there's a lot of things that I want to make an impact on, for the next generation, right? Like you always want to look back and say, did I leave the sport better than it was when I got there? Or did I at least make an impact to try to improve the sport in a way that I can, right? Like, there's only so much I can do as a driver right now, but maybe someday I can do a lot more. I think that to me is, I've always said those are true Hall of Famers that do that. They don't just take and leave. And a lot of times when you're in a driver position right now, like I can give back some, but you're more in the taking spot right now, right? You're out there, you're doing everything. But when you retire, you have more time to give back to the sport and try to make an impact that, right? Listen, we wouldn't have a job. Anybody here wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the generation before us leaving it in good hands, right? And like trying to make it better still to this day. You still see a lot of drivers, Jeff Burton probably being the number one example of this, that makes a huge impact behind the scenes that not many people know about. To me, that's Hall of Fame material. You're right there. Take everything he did on the racetrack and throw it in the garbage. Doesn't matter. I think what he's doing right now is what makes him a true Hall of Famer. I
say this, the number. Every even-numbered year, you've made the championship 4, dating back to the original year of this format in 2014. We're in an even-number year, so any pressure? And then the other part of this, too, is expectations for you guys coming to the playoffs this year, I think, are probably a little bit lower, but they were kind of the same in 18 and 22. What is it about you guys and this team that just thrives in this format, and you were able to supersede whatever that expectation is for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we don't really think about that too much. Like what the expectation is from the outside. The inside has to be, we're going to win. And the goal is to do that no matter where we end up seated in the playoffs to start, right? It's always, okay, let's get to the next round. Let's get to the next round. Let's get to the next round. And then the speed typically gets better throughout the playoffs. So hopefully we can do that again. And, that was where we had issues last year, right? Like, we didn't stay around long enough to reap the benefits of the speed gain that came later, right? Blaney did that, right? We had, some issues in the first round that kept us from moving on. Some of our own doing, some not of our own doing. And unfortunately, that's what, we weren't around long enough to get the good parts. So you got to stay alive. That's the big thing. You just got to stay alive. It's a long 10 weeks. Like 10 weeks sounds short, and these 3 race windows are short. But you just got to get through those 3 weeks and move on and keep moving on. And you don't know what's going to happen that next round, right? All it takes is a win, right? And that's what we've been able to do a couple times.